Many ask me to give some thoughts and reflections about prayer and the impact that prayer's had in my life. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I was not a church-going kid. I was a CEO, Christmas, Easter only, even then, not all the time. I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't have any idea what a relationship with God was like. And indirectly, Young Life had a huge impact on me because there were kids that I knew by the time I was senior in high school that were excited about their faith, which I thought was frankly stupid. And God met me in a powerful way. In the midst of my senior year in high school, I gave my life to Christ and started to read the Bible for the very first time. Never read it before. And I'm reading stuff about prayer and I'm thinking, what is this? It's sort of just talking to God. I was going to a couple of Bible studies. I went to a Young Life Club. I thought Young Life Club was pretty stupid. Why didn't they just come out with, the story and how you become a Christian? And then I met a young woman when I was 19 who was significantly impacted by her role in Young Life. Her name is Patty Irish. And she was excited about Christ. I was excited about Christ. She was blonde, really cute, so I thought it'd be good to be with her. And I ended up marrying her. We've now been married 49 years. And my relationship with Patty helped me understand why Young Life did the kind of things that they did. That they could be very interested, excited, motivated about who Jesus is, serious about who Jesus is, and yet at the same time, have fun. And the thing that impressed me about Young Life was that all the people had a kind of an aroma. Paul talks about the aroma of Christ in people's lives. And the aroma to me was life-giving. They were not afraid to laugh at themselves, laugh at each other, and yet be very serious and intentional about connecting with Christ and connecting with other people, specifically high school folks. So I got recruited to be a Young Life leader. I was 19, didn't know what I was doing, and so I was really forced to pray because I'm thinking, God, I need you to help me figure out how to do this. How do you go into high school? How do you meet people that you don't know? And I looked like I was 16, and so I think they actually thought I was a high school student. But one of the very first Young Life meetings, staff meetings, volunteer meetings I went to was set up to be a prayer meeting, and that we were going to meet and pray for several hours. And my thought was, how in the world do you pray for several hours? Is this necessary? Is this something that you're supposed to do? How do you do this? And a couple of things happened. The area director explained that the roots of Young Life are deeply founded in people praying for their ministry. And that's what we were going to do. We were going to pray for high schools where we were working, high schools where we'd like to be working, pray for kids, pray for all kinds of things. And, you could get up, you could move, you could, and it was really, that experience was, 50 years ago. I still remember it vividly. I had been a Christian at that point for about a year and a half. I'd had a couple of experiments with prayer where I began to see that there were things that Jesus promised, pretty amazing promises. I'll read some of them. And I just said, hey, whatever you want, whatever you ask, just fire away. Let me know. Tell God. And so in my early years, being a Christian, that's exactly what I did. I prayed for all kinds. I prayed for friends to become Christians. They became Christians. I was in a car one day, and the guy couldn't get his radio started, and I prayed. He wasn't a Christian. I prayed. I said, oh, God, start his radio. The radio started. I was like a rock star. People were like, I actually had a friend who said to his car, the God of Kevin, start my radio. It is... I was working at a grocery store, and it was Saturday night. It was late, and I had to clean, mop, and wax the floor. And so I'm thinking, well, I've been told if you really believe Just ask God and he'll do it. So what did I do? I prayed that God, I went in the room by myself and prayed that God would wax the floor. And I sat there for a while, waited long enough to think, well, you know, when it was happening, I went out. Not a ding-dong thing happened. The floor was what it was, and I'm like, that's interesting. And then, as I grew a little bit older as a Christian, I began to realize that prayer, or even saying in Jesus' name, was not like saying open sesame. It wasn't literally just, no matter what, you can pray and immediately God is going to say, you betcha. And so I began to think, and then the pendulum started to swing the other way where I'm like, well, if God is going to do what God is going to do, why pray? Why specifically ask for things? Why pray for somebody to become a Christian? Surely it would be God's will that somebody would become a Christian. And I began to see that some of Jesus' promises about prayer were so wide open, in fairness. If I didn't think back on those promises with theological fine-tooth comb to say, well, he says this, but he really means this. And just to take it at face value, you know, they're breathtaking. Like Matthew 7 through 11. Jesus says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For anyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, Jesus says, even though you're evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Or in the Gospel of John 14, 13 through 14. Jesus says, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. John 16, 23 and 24. Ask and you will receive. Your joy will be made complete. These promises are sprinkled throughout the Gospels where Jesus is saying to people, I want you to know that your requests matter and you need to pray. So I'm asking myself this question. Why does Jesus make such breathtaking promises about prayer? And I went from being thrilled about these promises to all of a sudden be a little bit threatened by the promises, because I began to think, and I was told, well, it has to be in his name. And what does that mean? Well, it has to be according to his will. And so it became more of a stress test for me. It's like if you ask for things and you don't get it, is that a reflection on you? Maybe you don't have the right faith. Maybe God's unhappy with you. The prayers of a righteous man availeth much. I think it's the book of James. So instead of thinking about, am I doing this the right way? Am I really doing it in faith? I thought, what would happen if we just took Jesus seriously with him saying, when you ask, the Father loves to be asked and will act on terms of the request. There was a very famous mathematician, Pascal, who was trying to explain, one of the smartest men who've ever lived, how it is that God uses prayer. And what he said is that God uses prayer because it gives his people, gives his creation, the dignity of causality. In other words, we become co-creators, co-ministers with God, and that God delights in doing something, but he delights in doing it because people are asking him to do it. So years ago, one of my daughters Was on Young Life staff, did Young Life in China. When she was little, I was out raking leaves. She came out. She said, "I'd like to rake leaves," and she raked leaves with me. Sometimes she played in the piles. She was never in. At the end of the day, she looks at the yard and it's all raked up, and she says to me, "Look what we did." And I'm tempted to say, "Oh, little one, you didn't hardly do anything." But I love being with her. I love that she wanted to do it. I love she felt affirmed and had been a part of it. And I think that's exactly what happens with God when we come to him and we ask him. Manny's father-in-law, Jim Cunningham's a longtime friend, Presbyterian minister. I'm now a Presbyterian minister. I did Young Life. I became the area director in Columbus, Ohio, and then was the area director in mid-Jersey, in the Princeton area in New Jersey. And Jim and I became great friends, and New Jersey has this wonderful system of a roundabout. And Jim would always enter into these roundabouts, and in New Jersey, everybody drives like a bat out of the bad place. And so you enter into, and I would laugh, and he'd say there's 3 rules. The 3 rules of driving a roundabout is that the oldest car wins. And the second one is you don't ever stop. And the third one is you don't ever make eye contact. Now, making eye contact is what I want to talk about. Because when you make eye contact, there is a sort of where there's an expectation between the two of you, that contact, that says, hey, okay, you see me and I see you and I'm going to be doing this, and so you need to pay attention. If you don't make eye contact, you don't have to pay attention. Jesus is saying when you make eye contact with God, it makes a difference. When I was in Israel, and we were told by our tour guides, don't make eye contact with the Palestinian children, because if you make eye contact with Palestinian children, they know they have you. Because you make eye contact, these dear sweet little kids, you end up not just giving them candy, but you buy stuff, that's exorbitant amounts of money. It is that contact, it's like there is an explicit ask that says, do you see me? How can you not respond to what I'm doing? Well, when I think about Jesus saying, ask, the ask is really powerful. Dallas Willard, talked about powerfully in his book, the Sermon on the Mount, where he talked about the ask moves God. And so I'm thinking, okay, if Jesus' promises are meant to be affirming and not threatening, and I think they are, what Jesus, because there's times when I wish he'd almost put some boundaries on it, more than even than he does. I think Jesus is saying, do this. This makes a difference. And the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew 6, Jesus talks about when you pray, go into a room by yourself. Or later on he says, when you pray, don't babble on like the pagans do. And you can hear those as kind of rules. I'm supposed to pray all by myself, or I'm supposed to not babble, whatever that means. Or you can hear it as Jesus saying, relax. Pray as you know how to pray. Don't worry about what other people are thinking. You're not trying to impress anybody. God is the one who hears. Just do it. Just do it. And in my case, I would say it was easy for me to get into, well, what's an important prayer request? Do I pray for parking places? Do I pray? And the more you pray about everything, genuine conversation with God, not about stuff that you think you should be doing, but is really happening in your life, the more real the prayer is, the more real your relationship with God is. And you begin to form a habit of turning to God in the very real life, your life setting. Now, Dallas Ford talks about, you have a flat tire. You don't pray about God fixing the flat tire. If you can do it, you fix it. And that was for me in the grocery store. God was like, I've given you the ability, Kevin, whether you want to or not, to go ahead and wax the floor. We can't fix people. And it's not fun when people try to fix us. So one of the best ways that we have to be able to really love people is to pray. And to pray for them. And through the years, I have prayed for people that I was close to, people that I wasn't close to. Young Life in Columbus, Ohio is one of the biggest Young Life metropolitan areas in the country. I don't know that it came out of those series of prayer meetings that we had in the very early days of Young Life. There have been really gifted people that have been there and done ministry. But I am confident now, and as I think about Jesus' promises, is that Jesus would be, why would you be surprised? That when God's people come together and they pray, and they ask God, and they express to God what's really going on in their life and their hopes, that it makes a tremendous difference because the Father is delighted to rake leaves with you. I was telling Manny that it's a Christian organization called Navigators. And Navigators is an international organization. And years ago, I read the book that talked about how Navigators got started. And Navigators got started because a group of guys came together, I think it was in Southern California, and they agreed to covenant together to go out and pray for 30 days, 40 days, I forget the amount of time. They went out on this canyon in the morning, and they met and they prayed. And they started out where they prayed for what they were doing, and then they began to pray that God would raise up people, probably men at that time, that God would raise up people in the community to love people, to disciple people. And then by the end of the time, whether it was 30 days or 40 days, by the time they had met for a while, they began to bring maps of the country, of California, and then a globe. And they specifically put the fingers on locations and prayed that God would raise up people to touch the world for Christ. And that's exactly what has ended up happening. Was that out of that time of prayer, God has literally raised up and done this amazing thing with the discipleship ministry of Navigators. I retired from my church ministry in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had prayed for a piece of property that was next to the church. And then I gave up and just realized it was never going to happen. And the year after I retired, my successor grabbed me at a national event. He said, Kevin, I need to talk to you. He said, I don't know what to do with this. There's that river property that's behind the church. Well, it went up for sale. And somebody in the church wrote me a note and said they'd like to buy it and give it to the church. And he said, I don't know what to do about it. I'm not sure if there's strings attached. I'm not. And I said, so somebody wants to buy the property, probably $1 million, and give it to the church. I started to laugh. And he looked at me like, well, what's the joke? And I'm laughing because it was a little private moment between me and God, where God is. Kevin, you prayed about this a long time ago. It's going to happen. I was going to wait until you got out of the way, and then I could do it. So you didn't think it was about you. And I told him, I prayed for this property for so long. This is a God thing. You've got to do this. And they did, and it's been great. It's blessed the church, and there have been people in my life, family members that I prayed for, I'm praying for now. And my expectation is that whether it's this week or next week or 5 years or 10 years or when I go to be with the Lord, that I'm going to find out those prayers really made a difference. So God bless you that you're going to love high school kids enough, not only to be with them, talk with them, love them, watch them, watch girls lacrosse, which is just the worst, and pray for them. Nobody makes themselves a Christian. You can't make anybody else a Christian. It's something that God has got to do. And so as you all are talking and praying about kids that you know, kids you don't know, kids you may never know, it pleases the Father and pleases Jesus. And frankly, as a Christian who was on Young Life staff for a long time, done ministry for a long time, it pleases me to think that Wake County, that you all are doing this. As you go about your life, Dale Brenner, who taught at Young Life events, taught a little acronym that I use my kids like, and the church members have remembered, so it's so easy. He talked about BIF prayers. And BIF is brief, intense, and frequent. And it was a sort of just make your prayers brief, don't make them fancy, mean them, and do it frequently. So when someone says to me, Ken, would you pray for my uncle who has pancreatic cancer? I'll say, let's do that right now. Let me pray right now, because I know I'll forget, and I'm thinking, let's just do it right now. So I might be in my car, I might be and somebody comes to mind for you, for me, I'm going to pray, pray for them. Maybe to come to faith, maybe a chance for me to connect with them, or healing in the family, or in relationships. It is just pray. Jesus is like, what else do I have to say to you to get you to do this with God? God thinks it's fun when this happens.